I don't have any intro music yet, so just be
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
ah. Hi everybody. This is Talking Top Tens, or a podcast that will be probably other things as well from this point, but it will always be it'll always be called Talking something. We're just going to be talking our top tens of 2022 this year. This is William Evans. And my guest today is Michael Hearn. Michael, yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Michael Hearn.
Yeah, we haven't I haven't podcasted in quite a bit, but I'm getting back into the sphere. But yeah, me and Michael have been friends for a few years now. We've followed each other on Letterboxd for years, and we finally decided to meet up like 2 years ago now. I don't
Yeah,
know,
a couple years now.
couple years.
Pre-pandemic too, I think was in it. So yeah,
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think it
maybe
was
under the wire,
yeah, right under the wire or
and
so.
then became Never Feels. But no, we've watched movies together. I think maybe at least one of those will be on our list. And then we've talked shop and hung out and everything about movies. So and I've helped you produce one, and you've helped me with writing and stuff. So we're in it. We're in the movie business.
We both have our individual jobs in the industry, and we various jobs, and but we've also, I think, we've just been like film festival brats a little bit. Like we've been to
Yeah,
AFI Film Fest, talk Criterions, talk shop. You have your huge collection behind you. I have my collection
only
beside me.
growing. Yeah,
Yeah.
it dwarfs me. Yeah.
But anyway, what I was saying was that we're big film snobs, and we've have running lists probably for years going back, and
Hmm.
I just thought we'd share that with the viewing public. I don't know if you ever were ever known as the guy who's really into movies at your office jobs, Michael, but I have been multiple
I'm
times been.
and not just office jobs, just walking down the street with my friends. Anywhere I go, I'm obviously the movie guy.
It's
Uh,
the Silver Lake community. You're
yeah,
like,
exactly.
there's Michael, and
There's
there's
a movie Mike with his magic list, and bothering people with it. No, yeah, I mean, you can tell list kind of comes with the snob territory because we always we love films, we love to rank them. It's all arbitrary, it's all a bunch of different forms of art, but we just there's something about like the encapsulation of the year that I like to do with like lists and stuff. So try not to get too heavy. I don't rank every single film I've seen, but I try to have like a sturdy top 10 and honorable mentions type of thing going on.
yeah, yeah, cool. Well, yeah. Without further ado, let's just jump right into
Mhm.
let's just go through our first like thoughts about
Sure.
2022
Hmm.
as far as entertainment goes. I kick it off to you, Michael. Was this a good year for cinema?
I like this year a lot for cinema, yeah. And I mean, it's also, I guess you could kind of say it's like the first real year bad for film after a little bit of like asterisk. Like 2021 had a lot of great films too, but like still almost needed like the found like was a little bit of shaky footing, getting everyone back in theaters, getting everything. 2022 felt more like a roaring comeback a little bit. And I mean, I went out to theaters a lot of times both years, but like this year I felt like there was more of a communal joy to it. I got to do a lot more at AFI Fest than I did last year. And I mean, I don't know. I felt like overall I had more audio like special events in LA than last year too. I think there were more like retrospectives that really were stood out to me, and it's been just a good year for movie watching in general. You know how I am with physical media. I collect a lot, and I've been bookending my year with a lot more. This year, I'm trying to make the effort to slow down a little bit because I still have to catch up. But last year, I bookended my year with the two Shawstroke collections from Arrow, which are all these films by the Shaw brothers, mostly kung fu, but like a dabbling here and there of like horror and action and comedy. And so like my like Letterbox lets you do stats for each year, and my stats, like all my stars are like these Chinese like actors who I wouldn't have known like the year before. Now I know them all too well. So I've been doing a lot of deep diving into like it's kind of like bringing back that side of my cinephilia a little bit, which is that deep dive I like to do where I'm like building little projects for myself of like I'm going to learn everything about Shaw Brothers now, and then
Right, right, right,
figuring that
right.
out.
Okay.
But in terms of wide releases with 2022, I think there's been like a good effort of like getting bigger films in the theaters. I mean, there's one specific film kind of want to be ambiguous like about because it'll probably pop up on my it's going to pop up on my list, maybe yours, is that it had like a biggest release for like an international film of that era in a while, and was like an online viral hit,
Yeah.
and as a result had multiple showings even still now in LA. So it's like happy to see like communities build around stuff like that. So I think it's been like a really cool like year for film, and I mean a lot of my favorites are pretty great, I think.
I have to ask you because I,
Sure.
I don't know if I would say this disagreement comes a little bit here it's
Right off the
but
bat.
yeah, I mean, like I don't want to say it's been a bad year. I think it's been a good year for like entertainment, but a good year for art films,
Hmm.
I don't know. I think it's a little up in the air for that, but then maybe that's more me. Maybe it's like like I felt that for a long time, cinema can kind of go, it can align with culture in a certain way. But I still felt this year that that film was still trying to figure itself out, like how to align itself with the culture, the broader culture. But that could also just be me. That could just be the atomization of culture in general. I think there was some stuff that got close, but I still don't. I just didn't really find stuff that, except for one film. One film, my number one is the one film that I felt really got like that is a great piece of art. But what do you think? Did we have more entertainment this year, or do you believe there was truly like some great art out
I
this
mean, there
year?
was some great art this year too, but I also, I mean, I don't try to shy away from populist choices too much.
Mhm.
I mean, I sometimes just do by nature of the beast because I do like a lot of weird stuff. This year, I admit there are some alignments where I probably did enjoy a film that was like a big spectacle or something that like played in a lot of like big movie
Mhm.
theaters. And whereas 2021, I probably had like a couple of ones that weren't so. Like, I know you're not as big a fan of Drive My Car as me, but that was a big favorite of last year for me. And I wouldn't say there is a Drive My Car type this year in that term of like specific art house appeal, crossover a little bit to the populist, but like I don't know. I think in terms of like underground hits, there were some interesting viral hits that kind of like from last year and even leaked over into this year. When it came to certain like elements, like some horror films of last year that I really liked that were kind of out of nowhere, little like spiked hits like Barbarian, and then Skinamarink, which was like a viral hit that kind of became a wide release this year that made like $1 million at the
Mhm.
box office. It's just like it's interesting that that can kind of happen in like the underground, like, but I mean in terms of like if you think there's nothing here that'll like be a standing piece of art, I don't know. Like I did a lot of deep diving this year, and I don't know like how much that would fit your view of it, but in terms of like populace and how much that crosses over, I think it's been a pretty good year for like getting people to like appreciate that set of art in like a big easy to swallow package
Yeah,
of
no,
like big spectacle or big like approachable stuff.
I
Um,
I agree with that. I guess more
yeah,
like a lot of the. I feel like I saw a lot of movies. At least the movies in my top 10 are complete films in the sense that they didn't leave me with a lot of questions. Like afterwards. They didn't like get me thinking as much, except for again my number one.
I can't wait to hear
And
this number one.
you probably know what it is already. But yeah, like there's I felt like they were more complete, like as in like they were more circles, like just I could tell everything what it was, I guess. I don't even know if that makes sense. I was waiting for something that would truly like disturb or shock or like make me question things a little more, but I don't think we're there yet personally out of
I
COVID.
get that. Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
that's part of it too, the comfort level where all the 2021s were like the big films that were supposed to come out 2020. And now we're in like 2022, like we all just survived something. Let's just like, appreciate that type of element to
Right.
it. But
Right.
you never know with how film like is going to pan out or flip out. Like 2023 right now is still kind of like early, and obviously that's all like the early like big spectacle films. So we're waiting on what's going to come out of the arts circles.
Right.
But
All
you
right.
know, see how it goes.
Yeah. Without further ado, I think we can
Yeah.
talk about it forever. Let's get into it.
Sure.
Michael, I'm gonna since you're the guest, I'll let you go first. Your number 10,
Absolutely. All
please.
right. Number 10. Just for a record, there were some like 2021 films that didn't get a wide release, vice versa, that I did or didn't count for like 2022.
Mm-hmm.
Just off the bat, I'll say Petite Maman, I counted as 2021 because I did have the chance to see it at
Mm-hmm.
AFI, did take up on that offer. I think it might have been Drive My Car that was the schedule conflict.
Yeah, I gotta go,
But
Celine.
uh, I
Which
know
one
I
is
get
good?
to, and I'm jealous a little, but I did get to see it in theaters in 2022, but I did see it
Mm-hmm.
through
Of
other
course.
means in 2021, loved it. So I'm not going to count it, but I will count this, which I probably could have done the same flip, but I did get to see it in theaters last year, Benediction by Terrence
Ah,
Davies. I
yes.
don't think you've seen this, have you?
No, I
All
haven't
right.
seen this. I've been
It's
meaning
very
to see
good.
it forever because, like John Waters, a lot of people love
Yeah.
it. A lot of
It's
people love it.
I loved it, not despite, but like kind of a surprise. I'm not a big Davies head. I've
Mhm.
seen his big ones, and I haven't seen a film of like his last decade or so, which includes like Sunset Song and stuff like that. Like I think the last one I saw was Deep Blue Sea.
Mhm.
So I don't know what speed he's been working in for the last decade or so, like how he works with digital. So this was really interesting to see compared to off of like Distant Voices Still Lives, which is his big one in terms of how he uses CG and how he edits now and how he like has a structured story in his own way now. And I really dug it. It's about this real man, Siegfried Sassoon, who was a poet who survived the World War One, fought in it, survived it, and then served his own to like the war to kind of live out his life as a poet after the fact. But it's kind of about like all his secret sadness because the big drama of it is that he is a closeted gay man who in London who doesn't like let on to his family, let on to his son who he really is, and lives like this sham of a life with his wife that's a loveless marriage. So it's all about this like irony of a man who like fought in a war he didn't believe in. So as soon as he could, he got out of it and disowned it. But then he lives a life that he doesn't actually want to live. And it's kind of reflected in its poetry, but it's mostly reflected in its relationships with a few different men and how they like imparted on him and just the way it's like kind of structured and layered for that, like his growing up with his son with like all these like failed romances and the lives that those people eventually go on to live. It's like really eloquent. It's really like introspective, like his poetry. Like the thing too is I'm not familiar with this poet or his work or his life. So it could have had me at a lot of disadvantages, but I feel like I got a really good sense from it from this film.
Mhm.
And the also in the whole like Davies spectrum, it's practically half a musical. The way like keeps going in the musical numbers of like army men singing together, or one of his lovers is like this big sort of like Liberace style songwriter, singer songwriter at a piano who sings
Yeah.
like heterosexual like put on like raunchy songs, but really he's like the biggest queen of all. And it's just like this really like layered story about it, and I think it's really interesting. And I the CG is so weird too because it's
Yeah.
not.
Well,
I don't know if you've seen
I've seen
clips.
a Quiet Passion, and that has like some
Mm,
age CG, that
interesting.
happens. That is very fascinating. I wanted to
Yes,
say that, like, just interject, even though I haven't
sure.
seen it. Sunset Song and Deep Blue Sea and A Quiet Passion, I've all seen and liked to various degrees. I love A Quiet Passion, was kind of mixed on Sunset, but loved Deep Blue Sea at least. And it's just fascinating. It's so cool that he gets to make these big budget, well, not maybe not big budget, but epic movies.
Yeah,
Benediction is 2.5 hours long. That was probably a little reason why I try. It's a little intimidating, for me right now. But yeah, I really want to see that movie. That's a really good
well,
reason.
yeah. Well, we've seen. Last big shout out aside from like other elements is just Jack Bowden, who plays the younger version of the lead, is like one of my top actors of the year. He's really good and he's really emotive without overselling it. And there's a lot of good supporting cast, namely actors in it, uh, that I really dug. And yeah, like I'm kind of, kind of makes me want to go back and go over what I missed from Davies, because that's a really interesting growth from what I've known from him. So I'll see how it goes with Sunset Song and A Quiet Passion.
Yeah,
Yeah.
excellent. Well, I know my next choice. I feel like there's gonna be a lot of like disagreement on this podcast, which is totally
I
fine.
think my next one will
But
be a disagreement. Yeah.
I'm sure. My number 10 is Argentina, 1985. This is a movie about the team of lawyers takes on the bloody military dictatorship and a battle against the odds. And a race against time. I'm reading the premise, but yeah, I really enjoyed this. I am I have some background in legal, and it's really hard to see like a good legal movie, a good lawyer movie, especially now. Like the trial of Chicago 7 was so like I know that they took so many liberties, but it just felt kind of self-aware of itself, and so while Argentina 1985 is like a straightforward procedural, it feels very concerned about the process of law and everything, and there's a very unsaid tension between the older and younger generation that we have now with Trump, in regards to Trump or Bush, of like, you didn't do anything when you voted, for, these horrible. So what happened was these military people were disappearing. They were kidnapping like people who were protesting the government, and just, they disappeared and they were put in prison. And this whole movie is about going after them now that the regime has changed. But it this kind of unsaid tension a little bit between the younger, like this older lawyer, and these younger people of like, why didn't you do anything when it was happening? And the older lawyer very much mean like, I didn't really have a choice, I was just trying to, like, there was no opportunity for this to happen. And it comes to a head at one point, but it quickly, it's one of maybe the weakness of the film. I kind of wish it pushed a little further into that kind of idea. But I don't know. I just like, I love like a good legal film, and they don't make them anymore. And this was like a really good like throwback to the Hollywood era of like lawyer and legal films. I know I'm pretty sure you did not love this.
I wasn't heavy on it, yeah. And I think the differentiating factor is definitely the legal stuff, because I don't think there's many courtroom dramas I love. This was probably on the higher end of like better ones, where I do see what you're getting out of it and do see like the tensions. And that is a very cool like political aspect to it that doesn't sell out like Trial of Chicago or something, or even A Few Good Men or something. But like, I think that structure just tends to not work for me. I also had a similar reaction to Saint Omer of this year, or last year rather, which was a French legal drama about a woman, and it was like very tuned into like the woman's trouble, but it was still structured like a legal drama and very focused on, monologues that were basically delivering confession, defense. And it was just like, I sort of like feels almost like too thematically on the nose sometimes with that.
Of course,
I can't, and that's just the nature of the beast. So it's like, that's just maybe where I bounce out of it. But there were good things about it. The lead actor was very good. And it's like, I kind of don't mind it being up for best international. It's not my least favorite of those. And no, I did what you get out of it. It's just not for me. My problem, not your problem.
No, I get it. I just love a good old fashioned kind of old ensemble thing. And you just don't see those movies anymore. And when they do, they just feel so hacky. So what, something that was just uniformly like, as I said earlier, there's just like a lot of good entertainments for this year. I felt like that movie was like, it was good, is complete, it finished, and when I ended, I didn't have lingering questions, but I had a really I was satisfied. I had a satisfactory experience, and that's a lot of my list this year. So, but Argentina 1985. My number 10. So let's just move right along to our number 9. What's your number 9, Michael?
All right. Well, on another genre that probably works more for me than you, and definitely a film I know you didn't like, but I loved it. It is the coming of age story Armageddon Time by James Gray, which I think I even had the fear of when I saw the trailer it felt didactic. It felt like it was going to be an issues film. And I think you know well as I do that I don't like those films. And you've seen me react to like recent like dramas that are like very on the nose about
Mhm.
racism is bad, like Empire of Light or something. But this, I didn't think that was the point of it. And watching it unfold and watching it be about this real, genuine, like from a perspective of children coming of age, I thought was really very well done and very touching. I genuinely teared up, which is not often for me. So I thought I'd give it credit for that. I thought it has a lot of good supporting actors that could have been overplayed. Like Anthony Hopkins is in it a little bit, and he could have been really campy, but he just has just the right amount of the right thing to say without it being said too bluntly. And Jeremy Strong is kind of doing like a character, but he's like not distracting, not inauthentic. And there is like a couple moments where you get to see a really shitty side of him that feels genuine. And then Anne Hathaway, I think it's just like, again, just the right dab of Hathaway goes a longer way. But I really liked the main two kids in this, Vance Rapita and Jalen Webb, who are like these really two like genuinely feeling kids who go for these really minor for like dramatic moments in their life, but for like them obviously feels heavy and weighted, and kind of the compromises they both have to make, not just for themselves, but for each other against the world, really landed for me. And I think both the kids, especially Jalen Webb, who I thought did a really good job of balancing like these genuine moments of he has to be like this joyful kid and then something happens, like, and it'd be small moments, like there's a moment where he's on a subway and an older black kid tells him like you're never going to get an ass even through the back door, and then he has like this moment where he has to go sullen and like sink into himself. And I felt like there were so many genuine moments in that film that are just like that, just these small moments that kind of eventually build up to kind of the eventual coming of age, like 400 Blows style, like miscreant kid coming of age arc that
Mhm.
admittedly like could have been seen as lazy. But I just think like in terms of how small it feels compared to like some other James Gray films that really swinged out there, I just, I don't know, I really dug like the whole atmosphere of it, the whole New York in the 80s, the whole world of it, like all that stuff. And I mean, the only like even the only thing that I found was a little too much was the like Trump of it all, where it kind of like has Jessica Chastain as Mary Trump or
Right.
whoever. And
Yeah.
I'm like, it's the funny thing of like, well, that really happened, and it's an amusing idea, and it comes into the theme of like the compromises and like the shitty politics of that world you just kind of have to put up with. But yeah, I mean, just in terms of where it goes and how it landed for me, I can't deny it. I felt very emotional, and I get that that doesn't work for everyone, such as
Yeah.
yourself.
I just felt like I was like striking out with like the number of scenes that just didn't work for me,
Mhm.
that like maybe if I looked back on it, watched it again, it would work better now that I know like the cohesive whole, because I think the ending is actually pretty good, where Jeremy Strong's
Yeah.
having this kind of discussion with his son in the
Mhm.
car about like, you just kind of have to do, you just kind of have to be I don't know, like this is the world that we live in and
Yeah.
this is how you have to be. I will say that I still like the premise of the movie a little bit of like I know there it's a really good version of a movie about people complaining, like about racism existing but not really doing anything about it, like that, like even though like, and I'm just kind of like tired of that kind of movie in general, of like racism exists and it's bad and that's it, like I just don't have the bandwidth for that kind of premise of a movie. But I think, and it's hard to argue this, back, because the James Gray is such a great director and he's such a great
Yeah.
writer that I'm flummoxed why he took that premise, but also like it does work in spite of that premise, at least for me. For me, despite not liking the premise, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I may have to revisit that sometime down the road. I could see myself liking it more.
Yeah, I wonder because again, I think the pitch of the trailer definitely edited some parts together that made it look like, oh, these kids are saying straight to Jalen Webb's face, like don't hang out with him or calling him the N word. And then you watch the actual film, and it's actually a little more nuanced and real. But yeah, I get how like it's a hard ass sometimes, and it becomes this thing of like it could easily read the politics as kind of placid. Whereas I think it's just about the coming of age of these characters, and
Mhm.
what can I say? I can't lie. I tried.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's great. Moving. No, it's all good. It's all good.
Good for you.
Yeah. My number 9 is a movie. If you asked me 2 months ago, I would be like, I have no idea how it got on my list, but I really loved The Bad Guys by DreamWorks. A movie I remember, seeing your rating, and you don't like animated movies that much as much as I do, but I saw your rating and I was like, okay, I might like this. I put it on. I was like, the first 30 minutes is pretty fun, and then it just kept being fun for me. I don't know if this is I have this whole other theory about animated movies. I think we kind of underappreciate them in general, but I felt that The Bad Guys was doing stuff that a lot of movies about prejudice, trying to teach kids about prejudice, or get really wrong. Like Zootopia has such a mixed metaphor with racism. It makes no sense. Like first you're like, the cute characters are supposed to be the minority, and then later it's the predators that are a minority, and it doesn't make any sense. It sounds awful coming out of my mouth, but I mean, it truly, like, if you think about it for more than 5 seconds, that's where it goes. And The Bad Guys was just like a movie that was like a pretty decent, like, explainer about prejudice and racism, but also just like a fun caper. I've never seen a movie that was like a kids movie that took Soderbergh and Tarantino and just kind of made it their own. I've always felt that you can't really judge a filmmaker until you see a kid's version of their movie. And those directors, I don't think, have made their own like kid version of the movie. Maybe King of the Hill for Soderbergh.
Yeah, I was about to say, but even that's like, Armageddon time style, coming of age in a rough environment, not something a kid would want to see type of thing.
Right. And Bad Guys is really, it just doesn't feel like a frame was wasted. It feels like this year, Puss in Boots is not on my list. I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it. But it felt this year that DreamWorks has really like embraced a whole new era of filmmaking for them. That was kind of there before. I will probably do a podcast about them later on as well. But like Captain Underpants, I thought was a pretty great film as far as animated goes. And we're just really seeing the seeds of that blossom now with Bad Guys. I don't know. I feel like I could say more about it. I wrote a lengthy review. It really hit me. It's like this kind of. I also really love at the ending. They don't they go to prison. There's no like reversal or whatever. It's also about how like the villain is like a good is performing goodness, and it's like the difference between performing goodness and being good. I don't know. Great film, in my opinion. What do you think about The Bad Guys?
I wasn't too down on it. And I mean, it is just kind of like, I can't hate on a kid's movie that at least does a lot right. And I do like what you're saying about, like, because I'm not a fan of Zootopia, and this is like a different speed of it a lot, because it's also about like accountability. It's about their actions. It's really about being a bad guy versus a good guy, as opposed to trying to make a Finn allegory out of like race to animals. There are a lot of good things about a lot of good voice actors. Mark Maron as the Snake and Sam Rockwell as the Thoughts were really good, especially. And then, like, I think there's a lot of fun in the direction of the capers and the action. I just, it's a broad kids comedy, so I couldn't get into some elements. And then I'm just like, the arc of the story kind of naturally being what it has to be. I don't know. Didn't hate it, but I had fun with elements, and I can see your appeal. So I definitely see all that. So I'm not going to, go too hard on it. I just think, it's like broad. It's what it has to be. It's definitely, I haven't seen too many animated that I really dug this year either, but like it was at least one of the more inventive ones, more out there ones. Like, not often you see one where the action is so like heisty and conny and plotted. So that
100%. I agree. It was fun. I'll probably watch it again sometime soon. Anyway, moving on to your number 8.
Yes. All right, my number 8 was one I could have almost, but I was out, during the holidays, which was around when it came out, and I think you called that this would totally be my shit, and it was my shit, which is White Noise on Netflix by Noah Baumbach. adaptation of a Dom DeLillo book that I did not read because I have not read a Dom DeLillo book yet. And I wonder how I'll like him because I also liked Cosmopolis, which I think is my only ever frame of reference, and I see some comparisons. But mostly, what I really dug about this as a Noah Baumbach film is that it's basically his zaniest, brassiest madcap comedy. And I would even go as far as to say it's full circle from his first film, Kicking and Streaming, which is a comedy set in a college about these goofy intellectuals who just are like young adults screwing around, but they are trying to take themselves so seriously. And in this version, it's family drama. It's Adam Driver as a professor, and it's sort of about the existential crisis going on in the world that apparently it was actually very timely about, people noticed. And then it becomes like it shifts into so many different modes with that I feel like a bad director would mess up on. I feel like what I like about what Baumbach does here is he has time to really delve into each of the tones. Like the start of it is the comedy in the college. It's kind of madcap. There's like a bunch of details. I could probably rewatch it and notice jokes here and there that I missed earlier. And it has like a lot of characteristics that are really amped up by like Driver, Don Cheadle, Andre 3000, just like really playing at the top of their performances. Obviously, Greta Gerwig and Jodie Turner-Smith too. And then it shifts into the existential, like madcap on the road, like National Lampoon's Vacation, but nightmare mode, where they're like racing around and surviving like disasters. And then it has this very weird third act, which I think turned off a lot of people. And that's where I feel like the Cosmopolis frame comes in for me, which is that it becomes very dark and it becomes very disturbed. But it's kind of like the fight for the like light and hope that they had at the very start again. And I don't know, it won me over from that. It really landed it for me in a way that I feel like could be like weird and turn off for some people. But I think it goes in such like it just kind of commits to the bit of all it does in such a way that I really delved into it. I think Adam Driver does like a really great like dark performance out of it. And I don't know, I had a lot of fun with like the choices here, a lot of the wild direction, a lot of the set pieces, a lot of the production design. I think it's a very tightly wound clock that I think ticks for very few people is kind of my way I would put it. As I don't think this is supposed to be like you talked about art. This is not going to be the mass appeal, but somehow Netflix produced it and it's on there. So it's just fun that happened.
That was truly White Noise is a what is this movie like a movie, like it was one of those like, sometimes we're just like, oh, we'll put it on and see, and kind of checking the phone a little bit, but then like, at the beginning, but then like really like getting drawn in and being like, what is going on in here? What are they getting at? It truly felt like it's like, to me, Baumbach is trying to go somewhere. This to me feels like a transitionary period film for him. Like he's next film is going to really get like what he's going for, maybe if he wants to keep going in this direction. Feels like him trying to pull like some big swings that didn't completely work for me, but it got really close to being on my top 10. I mean, it's in my top 20 for sure. But it's such a bizarre film, and I do love the end. I don't love the ending. I guess I love the ending song, but it's such a bizarre film. I really don't know. I really would love a 3-hour interview with Baumbach on like what the hell did he think he was doing? I love dueling Don Cheadle, Adam Driver, Professor.
The Professor off, all those different like weird concepts. I know friends who read the book and they have like issues with the adaptation a little bit, but I'm also like I kind of am happy that I saw it as the speed it is, where I'm like, he at least figured out cinematic ways to express everything in it. And whether or not you like everything in it, at least it's like what it's trying to do. It's very cinematic. It goes through like 5 different tone shifts, I'm sure, but I did that and I think it worked for me really well. I think it kept tied to the like characters that I liked. And I just had a blast with it, not despite the odds, I guess, but like just as proof of the pudding of what I kind of can dig out of film sometimes.
Yep. Cool. All right, well then I'll move on to my number 8, which is a festival release and I think it just came out on Hulu. My number 8 is Bruiser, Miles Warren's directorial debut. Truly a movie that I really loved, and I have to pitch it of like it's a movie about a kid who is kind of depressed in his life, and he is not sure about his manhood anymore. It's just like he can't compare himself to his dad, his stepfather, or his or his just various surroundings. And he meets a charismatic drifter who might or might not have some connection to his past, to his family and everything. And this movie is very like I would very much compare it to like Tennessee Williams in the sense of like it's just like character dynamics shifting back and forth. It's very tightly controlled acting by it has Trevante Rhodes from Moonlight, but even more impressive I thought was Shamir Anderson, who plays the stepfather, who has to kind of navigate kind of like the kind of controlled, like how to be a parent but also understand that your son has legitimate concerns, and he's very tightly controlled. It's very much like a boy, like a boy struggling between the id and the superego kind of thing. And they're shown in these two older men who have histories of violence that are both talked about by other characters, and some of them are confirmed, some of them are very, very violent. It turns out that, light spoiler, that the stepfather and this charismatic drifter were once friends, like once really good friends, and they like beat up people together and everything. So there's this violent past that, and all the while this young boy is trying to figure out like who is more relatable to him. The ending, the only thing I really have a problem with is the ending. I don't think it completely sticks it, but this is like an incredibly impressive directorial debut by Miles Warren. The short film that it's based off is also quite great. I really enjoyed it, and I can't wait to see whatever he does next.
Yeah, I haven't seen this yet. I did watch the short film because you sung its praises and recommended I check it out. I did really dig it. And what little I can tell of what I looked up about the film, which I still haven't seen, is that at the very least, what is cool about a feature that is based on a short story, or at least uses a short film as an impetus, or like to like build off of it. I've seen those type of features that are clearly based off of the previous short by the director. And I think the trapping they usually fall for is that they just start with the short and then build from there, or the short is somewhere in the middle, and you can kind of see how they just flesh it out around it. And I feel like that makes like the feature feel redundant, or makes it feel like it's just padding this one idea that it had. And that can be really tricky and tough and bad for like a short, because like a short film like is usually complete on its own, and it's the fact that it lingers that helps, and you're not supposed to answer it. What I can tell is that it really doesn't follow through on this. The short film does not have that much of a connection. It's just about the themes and the ideas, and maybe just some degree of like the context. And I mean, it sounds very interesting to me. Obviously, I'm a fan of coming of ages that are very unconventional and have to deal with like themes. I'm a fan of Trevante Rhodes. I'm a fan of like this kind of like I'm a fan of the director's previous short. So I'm curious to check it out. It sounds very interesting. I mean, at the very least, directorial debuts last year were kind of small because not a lot of people are getting out there right now.
Right.
So want to find some good ones. So yeah, definitely interested in seeing it.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear your thoughts. Also, it feature that one scene from the short with the weight, but that's it. That's like the only real
not even the
connection
Vader
between.
scene. Yeah. All right, cool.
Yeah.
That's good then. I think that's a good decision on behalf of the filmmaker.
All right, so I'll move on to your number 7.
All right, number 7 is going to be Tar by Todd Field. Who?
One thing, when we have crossovers, I'm going to respond. I'm going to like I'll skip to my 4 or whatever when we do. So you go on your Tar. We'll this will be our Tar segment basically. That's all I want to say.
No problem. All right, let's read it. All right, my number 7 is Tar by Todd Field. Definitely had interest and hopes for this. Didn't really know what it would be, and tried to keep myself cold on it, and came away really like interested and really lingered on it. Like you were talking about earlier in the start, like films that made you linger. And even though there's like answers to everything here, I feel like it still like has a lot on its mind that kind of like lives outside of it in the real world. And just in terms of fun, like it's a fun drama. Like it's still a serious drama, like Todd Field films tend to be, but it's fun about it. It has like a sense of humor that's very dark and morbid at times, can be kind of madcap, but mostly it's just this weird, like pitch drama that has like this really compelling central character, obviously played by Kate Blanchett, and like probably one of my favorite performances of hers. And just like supported like really well with like Mark Strong, Nina Haas, Noe Merlant, and like I think it's just yeah, like again, sort of like the white noise, like it's in a intellectual world, but it's making fun of it a bit. Tar is obviously in this like very like classical world. It's in Europe. It's like feels very stuffy, but then all the stuff that goes down it is very down to earth and kind of has like dark secrets behind it that are more crass and silly than they are like devastating sometimes. And there is devastation in it. I mean, there's a lot going on. There's a whole world to it that I think was really well built by Todd Field. And I also really liked he hasn't directed a film in quite a while, and I really like this swing of his direction, which isn't as like overtly stylistic as Little Children was, but it also isn't as just bare bones as his first film in the bedroom was. I think this is a really cool medium of meeting of the minds there, and I think he probably just had a lot he wanted to try, and I think a lot of it works really well. I had a lot of fun with it, and I'll be curious to see if Kate Blanchett wins the Oscar.
Yeah,
It feels like an Oscar-winning performance, but I also have hopes and should see others.
so see someone else that might that movie. Listen,
Yeah.
Tar is my number 5. So it's even higher. But
Yeah.
this is just going to be when we have our
Mhm.
common. Yeah, I really love Tar. I think this is I remember I think I texted you about it and you were kind of cool on it, and I think
Yeah,
maybe it's grown on you. I
it
think this is
has.
it grew on me as well. And throughout the year, like throughout the remaining year, I was always just like, have you, whenever talking to people who are into movies at all, like, have you seen Tar? I'd love to hear your thoughts on Tar. If you love it, you hate it, whatever. I'm just, I feel like it is, I don't think, a movie that has a lot of lingering questions, which is maybe a little bit of my problem with it. But at times, because I think some people have read into it like this whole dream theory or whatever. But I think it's pretty complete. But it's a movie that I just think reflects the times very well. And I've said up front that I don't feel like there were many movies that did. And this is though I think the one of maybe two that did very well. Yeah, it's just it definitely grew on me. It's lingered in my mind. I don't know about the ending. I think Mike
Mhm.
D'Angelo made a really good point of like I understand the ending. I just don't know if it's useful. And this ending where she is now on her down and out and performing for a video game composers. A lot of people has made this comment of like a video game fans at a convention for Monster Hunter. A lot of people made the point like it's funny because it's happening to her, but are we mocking Asian people a little bit? Are we mocking this whole like Asian culture is lesser? Is there two jokes there, or is it just one joke there, or do you want to look at both jokes? I don't know.
I know.
To me, I felt, and I'd love to know what you think,
Sure.
Michael, here of like it should have ended with her upstairs in her old room watching her when she was young.
That's that's not a bad ending, but I mean, I do like the ending. I found it odd that it's a little controversial, especially some people thought it definitely was out and out mocking video games. I think it's more, it's not even just a clash of like, oh, well, this high end composer now has to do this. I think there's like the way it's pitched to was really compelling to me, which is goes in without context. Like it's not like it then cuts to a sign that says this is a monster. Like we figure it out because it pans over a bunch of people in cosplay who are all women in these like empowering women victor like fighting Monster Hunter costumes. And I thought that was like this weird, compelling note of like the future. Like it almost feels like a sci-fi moment where like suddenly she's in the future and these are the warriors of the future type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's to me, it's the compelling thing of this is like her the first time we ever get to see a work of hers appreciated by the audience because we just see like people talking about her genius, people talking, and then it never gets to happen for her in this story, and then finally she conducts for an audience, a real audience, instead of just practicing and rehearsing, and it's obviously people she would find beneath them, but like they are enjoying it and it's good music for them. And then it's the weird flip of that they're also like in this world that she doesn't know about in this costume, and like I don't know, there's interesting layers to it that I think is more than just the joke of like she's now like it's not like she's conducting at a children's birthday party or something like immediately crass or something, but I sort of see like it's such a weird whiplash pitch, and I get like the point of like it even puts up the credits at the very start so that it can just be like cut to black and you have to leave with it, and it
Right.
has a real whiplash punchline effect. So I kind of
Yeah.
see why it like lands on people that way. But I think
Yeah.
I don't know. I think there's like layers like anything else here. I think it's more about the character, not about like whether or not we're supposed to take away the messages that video games are doofy. It's more like, well, it's for this character and what
Right.
happened to this moment.
I
And
I get that. I
yeah,
get that.
I know I'm
I
compelling for people and stuff, but like, yeah,
yeah.
I don't know. I don't see, I don't know. I don't have like an alternate version that I would do. I am kind of just like am compelled by what Todd Field chose to do. So I don't
Hmm.
know. I'm there with it on it, but yeah,
Yeah.
I see the discussion.
I would say like, we've talked about the movie so much, but we didn't really describe what it is, and it is hard to describe. It's like one of the hardest movies to describe. It's to me, I've pitched it as like it's a slow burning
Yeah,
crash of someone's life and career after sexual harassment allegations. And and a lot of people have been like, well, it's about cancel culture, but it's not. And I personally, I just subscribe to, no, it is a movie about cancel culture. It's a good movie about cancel culture. And I think that's, it's or
yeah.
in the Me Too era. And I don't see it much else than that, but I mean, that's not bad in my opinion. But yeah, I don't know. Tar is such a fascinating object of a movie.
Yeah. No, and I
That it's
mean,
hard to
one
talk.
thing I will say that it is not, which I've seen it kind of been labeled as, is it is not Oscar bait. I think it's too uncompromising and too weird. And I
Yeah.
think too much of its dramatic beats are not beholden to the obvious, like
Hmm.
sullen, sad sack character or the like reversals that like you would expect out of like a big
Right.
Oscar hopeful, which
Of
is kind
course.
of why it hasn't like it only got a few nominations and it's for like the obvious undeniable ones, but like
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think it's a very like I think Oscars this year honestly have done a lot of interesting choices that are atypical of them, and that might be a lot with what the Academy has been shifting over to do.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I just hope that the Oscar bait idea can kind of be kind of killed a little bit, where
Hmm.
we can just call a bad movie bad, and we don't have to be like, is it just going for the gold? So that's my defensive car.
Okay. I'm going to move on to my number 7, which is The Quiet Girl.
Mhm.
I know you've seen this as well. I feel like, but yeah, this is to me just like a really good remake of Heidi, basically. It's a movie about a neglected girl sent away from her dysfunctional family. When she kind of just blossoms in the care of like an adoptive family. We talk a lot about nice core movies, and usually derisively, I guess. But this one just, it just kind of slowly unfolded in like a beautiful way of parents that couldn't or don't have or mysteriously don't have children, and how how their love for a child transforms someone, themselves, each other, kind of what melodrama is. This is like repressed emotions finally breaking free. And there's a kind of a movie about a girl, an introverted girl, figuring out that there are other introverts in the world and being able to finally accept herself. Is kind of a beautiful movie, and it has a running motif that comes back at the end in like this truly tear-jerking way. It just got me. Like the other movie with you, Armageddon Time. I cried at the end of this movie. I thought it was a beautiful little Irish movie, and they also speak in the Irish language,
Yeah.
which I thought was very fascinating. And I've been to Ireland. It's beautiful. It's as beautiful as that movie. Yeah, I don't know. I loved it. I thought it was such a solid film. It was also very much reminiscent of Petite Maman,
Mhm.
in that
I can
way
see that.
of with like a little girl, but also like in a kind of alternative way of Catherine Clinch, the girl, is it's just you don't see that many kind of female protagonists on screen where they're very much like My Fiance and very much like women I've known where they're very quiet, very guarded. Yeah, I loved it. The Quiet Girl. What did you think of The Quiet Girl?
All right, here I get to be on the Armageddon time side
Yeah.
of you. Is it be like, no, you're wrong. It's no, I don't hate it. It is just like I think all the things you're saying about it are right, but I also think it's why it didn't work for me is that I couldn't get into it. I think it was too languid. And I think that is the thing of like still waters type of thing doesn't always translate to film for me. And there are cases where there are very anti-dramatic films I do love. And there are some directors who do work in a very slow approach that do work for me. I think I don't know if this director very well, if they've been doing much in the same realm, but I just couldn't get into the speed of what was going on. I saw the same dramatic beats, but I just saw them play out without much in between, and I couldn't get into the head or the world of this. Even like something like Close, which is kind of a similar like coming of age from this year, which is also for an international feature. At least I could sense like the dramatics behind it and could see like the step by step of each thing leading to the next. Here I felt like it was very observational to almost a fault, at least for what I appreciate about coming of ages. And I think purposely it's not trying to do anything too big with it coming of age. Obviously it's very quiet, it's very simple, and I can appreciate that. And I had no problem with like the kid actor you said was great, and they're like the beautiful scenery. But beyond that, I couldn't like really get into the story, and I don't know, just couldn't work for me. This is the part where we diverge, I guess, where
Yeah.
I need dramatics to cry, and you need something. You need less than that. You need something more truthful to you or something. And I'm like, that's fair. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm not
no,
going to poo-poo it because it's not a hateable film. I feel like if you hate it, you're probably a jerk. But if you love it, I can see why.
no, I mean it's totally fine. We're just learning about each other, through
Fair.
our talking about movies, so it's all good.
Mm-hmm.
That's totally fine. Like I have my specifics, you have your specifics. Yeah, cool. Yeah, it's nominated. Also, I would probably give that to the Oscar to this over Argentina. We'll see how that all plays out. But anyway, we'll move on to number 6. Michael.
All right, following the quietest movie of the year is the loudest movie of the year with Avatar: The Way of Water.
Yeah.
So disclosure, because it might kind of go. Sometimes it seems like it goes without saying, but I'll say it. I was never an Avatar fan. I never saw the first Avatar till last year. Somehow, 13 years went by, and I missed seeing it in the theaters and never saw it at home on TV, Blu-ray, nothing. And then when it came back to IMAX in time for this next one, I was like, I better check it out. And I liked it fine. I didn't like hate it. I kind of did James Cameron pilled a little bit late because we even saw Titanic in theaters, and I liked that a lot more in theaters, even loved it, in fact. And then, so I didn't really know what to expect from Avatar 2. There's a lot of hype. I could have just been as lukewarm on it or fine with it. I thought it was great. And I think a lot of it is the growth of James Cameron's storytelling and how it's kind of been almost in vogue, because I think there are like a lot of bombastic blockbusters this year that kind of took his lessons from like the Terminators and True Lies and first Avatar even, but like built on its own way. And I think Avatar 2 builds on it in its very own way. It's got like this family structure to it that I think there's like a common theme with a lot of my favorites this year that they have to do with families. And I thought the family of the Avatar, like it's heightened obviously to all its fantastical degrees, but it's about a family that has to move from their home to another place that's new to them, adjust, and then still will deal with the demons that they left behind. And there's so many different interconnected like relationships and how they like are affected by that, and how they're affected by the ghosts of their past, literally and metaphorically and metaphysically. And just in terms of action, it's obviously a big action blockbuster, and it all is like pitched emotionally rather than like spectacularly. Like there's plenty of moments where it's a huge spectacle. Obviously, there's a whole thing about a giant whale that's about the sort of span of the whales and stuff. But even that is still like tied into these like characters on a boat that are like real characters, even like little villain side characters that have like moments of characteristics. There's a whole world to that is really well done. And I mean, the performances are on it are honestly really well done. I noticed that in Avatar too, that I was like, Zoe Saldana's acting her ass off. There's a lot that's still coming through the mocap. And this, I thought Sigourney Weaver, who gets to play like a teen version of like a reincarnation of herself, which is what not the only like. There's so much spiritual like reincarnation and stuff going on here. That's very much what James Cameron likes to do sometimes. Like Terminator 2 has that.
Yeah,
And it's in here, and she plays like a really good like reproduction of a teen that feels very real, and that wouldn't have been possible if it wasn't mocapped and Avatar styled. I don't know. There's so many like crowd cheering fun moments, and for a 3 hour movie, it flew by. And I loved like the different speeds of it. The first act setup, that was the most of the hour, and then like the hangout in this new world at the second hour, and the big action blockbuster Titanic style sinking boats of it all in the third act. It's the third hour. It's just like, just if you want, like, it's my blockbuster of the year choice type of thing of like Hollywood blockbusters at least. And I think a lot of it, a lot of it is the sincerity of it. A lot of it is that it's not condescending. There's no wink to the camera. There's no nudge, nudge. It is very genuine. And it's almost of a number of times to the degree that Avatar 1 was, where I was watching it and hearing like 2009 speak of like little like jokes here and there that are like, well, man, action movies don't make those jokes anymore. They make jokes about how like, isn't it lame we're hitmen or something. Like, I just really am like now on James Cameron's speed of like sincere action blockbusters about characters. That their world is heightened, everything around them is heightened, but they're real and they have real wants. And I mean, I really dug it. I can't fault it.
Yeah. Well, Michael, we have another crossover.
Yay.
Avatar: The Way of Water would be my number 3 of the year.
Wow.
Yeah, really.
I was coming in hot.
Yeah, no. I mean, it's, one of those of 3 hours. Like I was itching to go back to see it, but I didn't, because it's 3 hours long. That's maybe my only real complaint of the movie. But it's truly an epic. I try to tell Samantha, like, it's just like, there's a whale named Payakun, and you will cry about this whale. Payakun. His massacre scene is one of the like you just want to stand up and cheer and like applaud. I've talked about this movie a lot with friends, and a lot of people, a lot of people in my office are like, I don't want to see Avatar, and it's really hard to pitch people on the movie, especially with some things of like the white guy of dreads. It's never really addressed or not even said. It's just, there's going to be a main character. It's going to be a white guy with dreads. Or like, is
Spider, my man?
Is he a Navi? I'm like, no, he is not. Like, people really are like, and there's some things that I can't abide by. It was also very funny of just like the kids are just keep getting in trouble, and then the parents have to get them out. But that's what being a parent is, it's truly like the simulation. I'm sounding so much more down on it for it being my number 3. But I mean, I truly, Michael, people have been, the first Avatar, people were like, apparently there was that news report that people had depression, that they couldn't
the Pandora.
I felt that leaving the theater for like maybe a few hours after, like, man, I wish I was at Pandora and I could just live there, truly.
I wish I liked water as much as the Avatars do, because that water looks great. I would swim in that all day.
Yeah.
But no, real life, I'm like, I don't want to go to the beach.
Yeah. But the big thing for me, and there's a great episode of Chocolate Trap House about The Way of Water, is that this whole movie is kind of making us root for, the first one as well, like the aliens to kill the invaders, which are humans, which is the American military. And this whole movie is like propaganda against the American military of like, no, they're bad. And that's why I think it's internationally a huge success. I think it's so anti-American as a movie. And, I think this is basically, if we can't end the, imperial system by the military industrial complex, then at least we'll watch movies where the Americans die horrible deaths for the exploitation they have, made the world.
And it's at least a little more like what's the term? It's a little more nice, good that it's. I'm blanking on words for some reason.
Yeah.
It's a little better that at least here, like all their technological advancements are completely unable to happen. There's no way the military can build a giant like robot that Edie Falco can pilot, and there's no way they can build little crab robots or like boats that can do all the things they do in here. Whereas
Mhm.
Top Gun, they're just like, check out these real fighter jets. And like,
Mhm.
okay, I don't, you know,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
advertising real fighter jets to me as opposed to Avatar, which is a whole invented world. So,
Yeah.
and it's still down on the military.
Yeah, it's still down in the military, and Jake Sully and all of them. Those names will never disappear from the public consciousness now. People
Mm,
doubted,
yeah.
but yeah, truly, I didn't talk enough. I mean, you really bodied the analysis with the James Cameron isms of the movie, but yeah, it's aesthetically just really pleasing to watch. I saw it in 3D and IMAX, and
Yeah.
there was no headache, which a lot of these movies do. I remember seeing Avengers years ago in 3D, not my choice, and it really like when it went like in dark scenes, I it hurt my eyes. So like it's Cameron is an artist. He's a painter.
Yeah.
He's basically a painter. His essence is as a painter, and truly I wanted to be in the world. I love that movie. I really love Avatar: The Way of Water, and I'm an Avatar
Nice.
head. That's my choice for the best picture. I hope it wins best picture, but we'll see. But anyway, move on to my number 6, which is a very niche film on a very niche topic. It is Disney Channel's theme, A History Mystery. This is a documentary by Kevin Perger, who's known for Defunctland. He's been churning out a few feature-length documentaries on various Disney subculture things. And this whole documentary is about a 4-note theme. And it's the dun da 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 and the mystery of who composed that theme, because he cannot find out who did it. And it's such a niche thing of like, well, why do we care about this? And it's like, well, he goes really deep into it of like how there's so many things in our art world around us that we don't really care about, but they subconsciously affect us. This is a bumper that is it plays in between commercials for TV shows to tell you that that we're going to a commercial break. And his whole thing is that he's been obsessed with these little niches of our culture for so long, that he's also questioned himself, like, is anything he does really matter? So the whole the whole documentary is a self-reflexive search for meaning for things that we don't consider very valuable. And at the end, there's a quite a big twist at the end that kind of recontextualizes the whole documentary. That it just truly astounded me. It made me more appreciative. I had it higher on a view, but then I viewed it like a third time, and it goes a little low for me because I wonder how you would respond to it. Some people have responded to it as like, is this just navel gazing at its like finest or whatever? Also, like the Disney Channel theme, like some people can't really care about that, but there's just something about like how we as like YouTuber, like people who've watched YouTube, or people who are obsessed with culture of like, we don't care about like the YouTube culture, for instance, is like scrutinizing every little last detail of art, now, as kind of like SEO for SEO purposes. I don't know if I'm making sense, but we're people who are nerds. How far does the rabbit hole go with like how obsessed you are with certain aspects of aesthetics? And I think that's a really interesting question that is kind of semi-present in the documentary. But yeah, I don't know. I'm a really big fan of Kevin Perger and his previous documentaries. And I think this one is a really a big step up. I would love to hear what you think of all of that, but also would really love. I don't think you've seen it yet. No.
No, I've not. And I mean, I'm not familiar with a lot of I'm familiar with what Defunctland is. I'm familiar with some degree of like this sort of new wave of YouTube documentary makers, like John Boyce does all these baseball and sports documentaries. And wouldn't call it YouTube, but Adam Curtis does those very long form documentaries and stuff. And it's even like someone like there's a streamer H Bomber guy who did like a very long video about Minecraft that apparently is really compelling. And I'm just like, it's an interesting world, and I think it's really cool that like there's an element of YouTube that finally crossed over from like it's taking niche stuff and turning it into like legitimate documentaries that like are researched and developed, like their conceptually developed. And you could argue maybe they're like insular, but it's still like if it has like a subject and it's compelling to like audience and creator and they're finding new things as they go, that's documentary filmmaking, baby. Like that's better than the old form where we had like when it started out with the internet with like the Tony 2012 or the loose change bullshit, which was just fake. It's just like, yeah, like at least it's like a real documentary, like holding to standards filmmaking. So I'm curious, and I'm also curious. It's interesting to me that like Defunctland is like anti-Disney, and I know you as a very pro-Disney content person, so it's kind of cool that like you can share both sides. I'm curious about it. It's a good sell. I'll probably watch it one day. I just didn't make a priority for that, probably because it's not like wide release big film that will be voted on or something. So I don't know. I'm down to check it out, but it sounds compelling.
It kind of also makes a case for itself as a documentary later. As you were saying, like because of the distribution models, we condescend.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you do, but I think
I know,
culture in general condescends things. So,
yeah, but I'm even trying to advocate a little bit that at least YouTube isn't what it used to be, which would be
exactly
bullshit. And I mean, there's still elements of YouTube that are bullshit, but yeah, you can differentiate for sure.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts, and if it's too Disney, just tell me. I'd be like, "Well, you should have put someone else."
No, it's your list. You choose your list. That's all good.
All right. So yeah, we'll move on to I think it's number 5, right? Your number 5.
That's what I have. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, number 5, which I rewatched recently on 4K to make sure it holds up, and it does for me. I am a big fan of Nope by Jordan Peele, which some weird rankings. This was oddly I found muted in the general populace reaction, but I think it's his best yet. Whereas I think some people are more confident in saying either Get Out or Us is his best yet. And I think what I like about Nope a lot is its idiosyncrasies, like its weirdnesses, its things that don't fit very well into Hollywood filmmaking while still being like kind of a perceivable story and arc. But I think just in general, like I think there's these really weird thoughts about Hollywood and spectacle and what we subject ourselves to and for art that are mixed in these two really weirdly pitched creature feature stories. The obvious thing is that, there's the backstory of the Gordy set, which I think was a really compelling, simple, straightforward story of like one of those Hollywood horror stories you hear, but it's pitched in like we see both sides of like the fun pitch of it as well as the real horror of it. And then we see the modern day alien UFO story and it being pitched as kind of its own animal wrangling, like weird alternative pitch. And then there's the history of Hollywood like subdued in it. And I think it's a lot of subconscious things that Peele was working with that could be like metatextual to his growth as a filmmaker, as a film director, as someone who started in one field and became in the other and has his own demons. I could even say, like, I think in terms of being a comedy actor that became a horror director. And I think there's a lot of things about it that I found really compelling. But I think just in terms of like spectacle, like there's so many moments in this film that I've never seen in any other film. And I think even when it's even when it has like the little bits and pieces in between where they have to fill out the story, he kind of finds his own way to have his own humor and his own sensibilities in there. I think obviously Daniel Kaluuya is the like lead and like the really compelling force of it, and this like quiet seeing eye that really takes in and processes things, and T.T. Palmer as like the more active, less thoughtful sister is the real compelling dynamic. But then like all these side characters that pop up that have their own like personalities and characteristics, and whether they like fall into like traps because of it, like Stephen Yeun's character or Brandon Perea's character, and it becomes this like kind of ensemble about Hollywood and about making film, but it's also just an ensemble of like this weird horror that's really pitched really weirdly and darkly well.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of like modern horror that I think is working off of the history of horror really well. Some of it for like the elevated horror, quote unquote, things that go are trying to do too heady or trying to like mask it or hide it or shy away from it. Whereas I like stuff like this or even Barbarian where like they're kind of proud of their influences, and I think they just make a do good effort to subvert it enough so it's new.
Yeah.
And I really did that about Nope. I really think it still lands for me on the second
Yeah.
watch.
Yeah, it didn't land for me on the second watch.
Nah.
But I really I don't know where I mean like I feel like I kind of wanted to like it a lot more when I saw it initially. And I think the thing about the film is that the engine is really great. Like the
Mhm.
engine, the core idea is great. And then everything else I'm kind of mixed about. I don't think the Steven Yeun thing works as well. I don't think that storyline I feel like it could have just been a movie about two it could have just been the Daniel Kaluuya and Kiki Palmer movie. And then all this other stuff kind of one of my problems I've talked with friends about, of just like why does it cut away from violence so much? Like there's the whole part in the flashback of the monkey where it just keeps cutting to black. It just keeps cutting to black. We never really see this, and then when Steven Yeun is about to be attacked by it, it cuts forward or it cuts to black. It's just a very strange like insistence to keep the violence to a minimum on screen. I'm not like a gore hound or anything, but I just was like, why this? Why this instead of, and I think that the chapter cards were a little self-conscious. I don't hate this movie. I feel like I'm coming down on it really hard, but I do think like it, it's still like I feel like Peele is very self-conscious as a filmmaker, and us had like a cleaner I felt arrow or a straighter arrow until the end where it really kind of like tries to throw a bunch of things about like ballet and all that doesn't really make any sense, and I felt like Get Out has always been, the third act I feel is very self-conscious as well. I don't know. Nope. I maybe I'll love it again, but I hate to be the source of disagreement here on it. I do like. I want to love Peel, but I'm not there yet, I guess.
I get you. I'm just happy to be on the Peele train and see where it goes right now. Because so far he's at least free for free in that I like all his films, and that's good. And they are all interesting and different. And that could be like there could be, a filmmaker just makes the same film over and over again, and that'd be boring. But I feel like they're all different. That I kind of don't fault people for having their preferences about where he lands. But I'm really compelled by him so far. So
Yeah,
happy that this one worked out
yeah.
not only well for me, but the best for me so far.
Wish I liked it more. But yeah. Anyway, moving on. My number 5 was Tar. We already talked about that, so I'll move on to your number 4.
All right.
If it's all good.
All good. My number 4 is Park Chan-wook's Decision to Leave, which was unjustly snubbed by the Oscars in all categories after their show out for Parasite. That's very disappointing. But I thought, for starters, I think just a note that I want to say about it that I don't see too many people preach on about it is that it is a very funny film. It is very absurd. It is very dark. It is very purposely whiplashed. And I think it knows, like, we've seen the detective falls in love with his suspect movie a billion times. How can you make that fresh? Park Chan-wook does everything he can to make it fresh. And I feel like that's really compelling. And he does it in every way. He does it in direction. He does it in writing. He does it in acting. He does it in the characters. He does it in their nuances. He does it even in the chart of the film. And some of it plays off of our shorthand so much that it basically is a joke about it. But I think also as its story, what kind of the impetus of it all is this like tragic love story between these two people who definitely can't be together, want to be together, the tension of that, and also the backstory and ambiguity of, well, who really did what and for what, and what that unfolds and why it would be devastating or not, possibly, to the other person. And it's so layered, it's so rich, and I think there's like just again a constant barrage of things I've never seen before in a film that sounds like on paper could have been very basic.
Yeah.
There's a lot of jokes about it that are very funny too. Like there's a fun moment in the middle where there's like a rooftop chase, and it kind of ends up being tied into like the theme of the story too. And it's just funny that like, oh, of course, there's like almost even that feeling of like, of course, this is what this guy's going through too. And then like I like Park Hae-il, who's the main guy, a lot. I think a lot of people have preached how great Tang Wei is, and she is great in it. But I thought he has this very fun performance as this sort of like narcoleptic detective who like is exhausted and loopy and sees everything and reacts to everything in a weird way. And he just really like it's kind of like about falling in love in that sense too. It's like this whole weird world that he has to unearth, and it just keeps going deeper and weirder, and he can't like get a hold of it. And kind of the tragedy of it being too late almost. I just think it's a hoot, and
Yeah.
I'm it's odd. Like I would have assumed it was a lot more accessible because of that, but it seems to be like kind of iffy on some people. So let's see what Will thinks.
I didn't love it, but Park Chan-wook is like one of
Mhm.
those filmmakers. I truly feel like he should not write scripts. He should just direct
Yeah,
movies. I don't know.
he's done that before, though. Have you seen Stoker?
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. I don't know. I'm always eternally mixed on Park as a
Yeah,
director, and I don't even know if my problems make any sense because he's so loved, and I get why he's loved. I mean, there is no one who's directing better than him. Like
yeah,
basically,
he's
like
insane.
very few people come close to like visual ideas as well as
Mhm.
he does. I really love the editing with like the
Yeah,
text message dot 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 on his face, is just it's such a great like feel. Like no one that like we last year we had Coda where people were, we still had
yeah,
over the shoulder shots of people on the phone. You're like, there's visual language that you can use here that Park knows, like
yeah.
his DNA. He's very much like Baz Luhrmann too in that regard. Not on my list, by the way, all this, but
No, I
yes,
know
like,
that's what I assumed.
but maybe it's too much for me. Maybe I try to remember
It's
what my
very
real
bombastic.
problem was, but I do like that he's going more towards melodrama.
Yeah,
That was good. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know. There's something. Maybe eventually I'll get Park, but not
yeah.
yet.
I mean, sort of my hot partake is that I'm more of a fan of kind of his later era than his like earlier era that made him get out on the scene. Like I
Yeah.
love the Vintage trilogy, but I think I love Handmaiden and this stuff like generally more. I like
Mhm.
the speed at least. Stoker's
Yeah.
fun, but it's probably not what I would consider one of his better ones. But still, like I think just in terms of like maturity combining with his like penchants for like this flashy style that he can
Mhm.
give himself is like really when it combines like it does here and in Handmaiden, it's really terrific.
Yeah. I gotta see more of him. All right. So we'll move on to my number 4, which is a movie we saw together.
Yeah.
It's the Banshees of Inisherin. In
Okay.
that came, you thought maybe I'd go somewhere else.
You did. You did. But hey, I like this one too.
Yep. Well, yeah, I don't know as much as me. I feel like there's definitely the points that we, go up front. The weak thing is the kind of like, I don't know if I would wish someone else directed it. It didn't feel like it was as cinematically impressive as, say, Decision to Leave. But I do think this is one of the better screenplays, maybe the best screenplay, original screenplays, one of the better live action, I don't know, one of the better screenplays of the year, because I just think the kind of the thematic connection between art and and let me start that over. I think the
Mm-hmm.
thematic connection between like wanting to be your full self and feeling, and also being part of a community, is very interesting. The idea of like one day a friend might just not want to be in your life anymore, and that's the entire driving force of the film, is the Brendan Gleeson character doesn't want to be part of Colin Farrell's life anymore, and it's a very simple idea, but it just keeps expanding outward. I very much sympathize with Colin Farrell for the first part of the movie, and then I 180'd on him with Brendan Gleeson, because I sympathize completely with Brendan Gleeson. I've definitely had those toxic friendships before, of people that I needed to cut out of my life. And people would judge the Brendan Gleeson character for that, but it's so much like, are you an individual, or are you part of a community? Like, it's like a really good question. Maybe even works for, as I said up front, that I didn't feel like movies related to the time right now. But that's a great question that we went through with COVID. Are you an individual or part of a community? I became more community focused, and I feel the right wing part of this country became more individual, focused, or that came out, that was pronounced larger, in our society. And I just think it's really well. Oh, did we lose each other? Oh, no. Okay.
We Yeah, we did. I was texting you, but I got back on. I guess it booted me out and kicked me back on. So maybe it was my side this time. Sorry. I was
No
just
worries.
texting you to be like, you can keep going and I'll chime in at the end because you're on a roll.
Okay. Oh no,
But
of course. Well, anyway, but no, I just the ensemble cast was great. Barry Keoghan is
yeah.
proving once again that he's just like on another level of acting.
Mm,
And I don't know. I thought it was funny. I thought it was there was very few movies that I thought were really funny this year, like genuinely
true.
funny, and the performances just really carried that humor throughout. So I don't know. I don't even have much else to say. It
Mm.
resonated with me very deeply. And what do you think, Michael?
I really like it. Definitely top 20, maybe the top half of the last 10 that couldn't make it. I really like it. It's very, like you said, very funny. I really sometimes theatrical films that feel like they could be plays don't always work for me in a sense, but I feel like the combination of it at least has like a really like good atmosphere, good setting, good combined like aesthetic to it. Really drove it forward. But yeah, just the cast is sterling. Like all the great leads. I don't know if you mentioned Carrie Condon, who was this sister
Yeah.
character, is really great. Just like a really solid, like you get everyone's deal, you get everyone's dynamic, and you get the comic absurdity of like it's almost waiting to go style, like weird meta drama that's going on of this just like friendship wanting to end out of nowhere. But then it also becomes like about like, sort of the argument that I guess we all have, like, don't we all go for that in some degree with friendships? Why do we have to go the nice route of just letting it fade out or putting up with people? Vice versa, that also can go into art because like his kind of argument ends up being like he only has so much time to do things he wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
And do you go about that nicely and then not get everything done, or do you go about it meanly, get it done, and then no, you lose your friends or you act like a jerk in the process?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of comedic absurdity that I think that was very fun. It's definitely my favorite of the McDonald's.
Yeah.
And yeah, like Colin Farrell, I gained his first nomination, probably overdue, but this is one of my like probably my favorite performance of his as like a lead that has like all these elements of like humor and self-defacedness and like sort of like bewilderment. I just think there's a lot of like layers to each people's performances, so I really dig it too.
Cool. Yeah, yeah. I just want to say that's like the ultimate small town movie of like, do you leave or do you
Yeah,
go? That's another element added on top of it. And
true.
what makes of the people that stay, and what makes of
Yeah.
the people, yeah, could go. It's just a lot of interesting dynamics in that. And anyway, that's my number four. I believe we'll be on number three. Go ahead, Michael.
Yes. All right. Number three was one of the big like surprises of the year. Didn't really know much about it, and then kind of got like a viral hit.
Yeah,
Got in the
I know what.
theaters, got big, and could have gone which way. And I even like been watching some Indian films to make sure like, am I just new to this? But I think this still has something special to it that other films I've seen don't, which is SS Rajamouli's RRR Rise or Revolt, the basically James Cameron of his era of Telugu film, because it's very bombastic, very big ideas, very goofy CG to support these very big ideas, and very big emotionally, but also very sincere and very weird. And there's definitely propaganda elements to it that I'm not, trying to dabble in because I don't know enough. But it does become this thing of like, but as a story, these characters doing these things, having to make these decisions, having these haunted ghosts, having these tough like existential crisis, just fun, and it's a blast, and it never like cheapens it. It never goes wink wink. It never negates on itself. It really is just a big blast of a film, and just I think the big selling point for me for this, for it being so high, is that hands down my favorite theatrical experience this year. I saw it at the one of the encore screening, which is what they called it, at the Lamley NoHo. And you would think a small like because they've had it play since at like the biggest IMAX theaters here. They've had it played twice at the Chinese theater, and I could not get into those because they sold out within seconds. It's a big popular hit here, and it's everyone goes when they can. And usually right now, because of the Oscar season, a lot of the stars and the directors are doing a Q&A with it. so I couldn't see. I have yet to see it again in theaters. I kind of don't want to see it again here at home because I know how it plays with an audience and it pops. At the Langley NoHo, which is a small theater, it wasn't even sold out. I think because there were a lot of screenings going on that same night. Um, it still just like made everyone in the audience like explode at every like given moment. It was just on top of it. And I've seen some Indian films, some Telugu films, even some other Rajamouli films. I'm not as hyped on. Some I see the same elements that I like a lot. Some I still like a lot. I think this one was more special because it is just like so big in scope and so big in like elements of like all the fun it has. And even like its big breakout song hit "Not To Not To," which is up for the only Oscar got best song, which I think is a lot. It's also like tied into like the emotion of the movie. It's tied into a very fun moment. It's a very fun scene, and it's just again all tied into just how genuine it is. I yeah, just have a blast with it. And it's hard to like bear down on something that just made me smile from beginning to end. So, you know,
Well, I'll bear down. And no, I'm
yeah,
just
I
kidding.
was
I'm
about to
kidding.
say,
No, I don't hate the movie. I did see it at home, which is probably the bad way to see it. But a 3 hour movie is really hard to pull me out to theaters in general. That's just maybe unless it's Avatar, unless it's like gonna like change my life. But I mean, a lot of people did love RRR, and I might have just missed the boat on it. I can definitely admit, cop to that. I remember years ago seeing like a few Indian films with a friend, my friend Bebop, and you'd just be like, just fast forward the musical numbers. There's so many of them, like they never really figure much into the plot, so like, and that's kind of how I felt with RRR, is that I just a lot of the third hour especially just feels like there's just dragging. It's like we don't need to know his origin story. We can just jump forward. We could get out of here a little sooner. There's just a lot of the movie just feels like it kind of it's hard to watch at home. I will just say that much for sure. It might just be like a theatrical experience. It's kind of like what I would expect Gravity is like. That movie is a great movie to see in theaters, but I don't know if it really translates to home viewing at all. So maybe I just missed the boat on it, but the propaganda. There's been weird discourse on the movie that I have definitely taken part of a little bit, but I don't know. It didn't really grab me as much. I thought it was fine. It's like just a 6 out of 10 for me personally.
mm-hmm.
But I'm not. I have to turn in the cinephile card. I just
this
not
one was
on
one of the
board.
populist things, and I mean, I've also like again, I was like, well, am I just liking it because of like this novelty or anything? But I've seen some Indian films, even a couple in theaters, like I saw Fawn from this year, and I could see the different seeds of like this is more ego driven, and it's just like any other Hollywood blockbuster. There can be a great Hollywood blockbuster, and then there can be a Fast and Furious style Hollywood blockbuster where it's more just like what we can sell on it and what the ego isn't driven to and what that version of its status quo politics are. And I think it's like almost like I kind of almost admire that. Like if it's propaganda and it's weird propaganda, it's swinging for the fences, it's going big, and it can't be toy about it, so it has to go hard. At least it makes this story more compelling in that sense.
Yeah.
And I can differentiate it from outside of that. Obviously, y'all can. But like I'm just saying, like in terms of where the entertainment value comes from, it is just the fact that it goes so hard in so many ways, and it's never shy about it, and also never, shoots itself down.
Yeah.
So I had a blast with it. And again, like the James Cameron things I've been going through recently, it's just making me rethink about how action can kind of be a genre that is impetus to really interesting storytelling if it allows itself to be, and it's not just generic action movie or something. So,
All right.
I still love it.
Maybe I'll someday see it in theaters.
Yeah.
So my number 3 was Avatar: The Way of Water, which we already talked. I can go to my number 2. I know you just talked a lot,
Yeah,
or
no problem.
you can go your number 2. Okay. My number 2 is Turning Red. Disney Pixar's coming of age story of a prepubescent girl in Toronto during I believe the mid 2000s era. I don't think it's ever
Yeah.
maybe like early 2000s, maybe late 90s. Um, I don't even know really how to describe go through this movie. Something I talked about a little bit earlier with Captain Underpants of alluded to like why I like that movie, but one of the big things about that movie is that it's a movie that feels directed by its protagonist. The Captain Underpants movie, and that's the same with Turning Red. It feels like it's directed by the person that is starring, which is a very a weird thing. It's very maybe a little manic. It's all over the place in some way, but it does it treats emotions of like a child, like it gives them big space for them to feel it. The metaphor I of like she turns into a panda when she experiences I don't know, kind of awkwardness or excitement of any type. The metaphor I have had a bizarre relationship with, because I can see how people see it doesn't track. I think it does track, but if I trying to think about it right now, I can't put the argument. I think it's a metaphor for just the growing apart from your family, and if you take the path away or take the path on, is suppressing the emotions or letting them out is what the movie's really about. And it's just a beautiful movie. Me and Samantha have watched this movie 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
Once with the director commentary. We just really love it. I don't even know if that makes sense at all, as far of why I love it. I just think there's something about the fact that it's also about menstruation and becoming a woman in a certain way is truly brave of Disney Pixar. Probably never going to do it again, but I just really loved it. I loved seeing this perspective on screen. I'd never seen Asian women from this kind of perspective, and also it taps the Lady Bird button for me, and Lady Bird is a top 10 movie of all time for me. So yeah, that's Turning Red. I know this is the conversation
more like
I'm dreading. Not dreading, but I'm looking for it. We'll see. I'd love to
explanation
hear
why that I didn't like it. In fact, I even veer into hate, but I feel like most of my veering into the hate part is a lot of just the form. And I think a lot of the form of its animation is kind of this latest era of animation that I really almost like have like TikTok too much information at once whiplashes from, which is that like all the emotions these characters go through are immediate. Like she's just normal one moment, then immediately happy or immediately sad or immediately like anxious, and like all these crazy emotions immediately. And I see the philosophy behind it, but I also like it's the same thing that happens in a like more lowbrow cartoon, like a Nickelodeon cartoon that would be on right now or something, where that's just the animation style that's in vogue. And I'm really not on, like, I've even seen like I saw a recent clip of a SpongeBob episode, and I haven't kept up with SpongeBob. I only know like the first few seasons, maybe some of the couple seasons after its best couple of seasons. And then I saw this latest one. It's completely differently animated to a degree of like it's almost fluid, and I'm just like my eyes hurt watching this. And I have a little bit of that with Turning Red, which is that just so much of the animation is so jerky and whiplash and kind of immediate. And then just the form of the story itself is that there are a lot of things I don't mind about it. I'm happy for representation. I'm happy for interesting ideas. The kaiju element was the part that I thought would sell me on it, especially near the end, but I didn't get much out of it. I don't think it really tried to go for much with that anyway. But the animal metaphor kind of gave me Zootopia vibes a bit, which is that I'm a little too confused about where it's trying to go with it. And then I think it does some things that only just muddle the metaphor. Like it's not just her who ends up turning into an animal. So there's this whole weird backstory of like it's generational, it's this family specifically, it's this element specifically. It becomes weird and muddled, and I can't make out exactly what I'm supposed to find in the connection from that. And maybe like a rewatch or rereading of the plot would help. But I also am just like, in terms of like the sense of humor tied into that, it is the goofy kids elements that do make it a little dragged on for me, and I can't get on. I hold it. It's the whole kid dynamics, and they're like, it may be true to how kids are, but it's also true to like the heightened version of like a Disney kid is or something, or the Disney Channel movies are. And this is its own thing a little bit, but I just can't get a hold of it. It's hard to be like, it just wasn't for
It's
me.
okay, Michael. It's
You get it.
okay.
I
I'm
just
just connected to my inner child, and you're not. That's
apparently I hate my inner child.
no, no,
No,
no.
it deals in like cringe and awkwardness like a lot too, and that can sometimes work for me, but sometimes turn me off. And I think it's just this specific animated pitch didn't work for me, especially. And I don't know, I could just be down on it because it happened in the moment and I wasn't feeling in the moment, and maybe it ease up on it more, sort of like Bad Guys, where I can be like, well, I see the merits in this and that,
Yeah.
but it's still just not for me. It's still, a family friendly movie that I could designate as kids.
It's
It's you have these two animated films, and I don't have any animated films on my list, so it makes me look like a jerk. Aside from
no, it
Avatar,
doesn't
right
make you
there.
look like a jerk,
Jerk animation,
Michael.
but I love animation. I'm just saying, like it's
Yeah.
mass media animation that sometimes doesn't always work for me.
I get it, Michael. I think it's like I was gonna say it's funny. Like RRR is
Yeah,
you're turning red.
basically.
Basically, it's like I think maybe you're connected to that inner like teenager, and I'm more connected to
Mm,
my inner child of like it's
fair enough.
expressive and colorful and blah blah blah. It's like a big emotions and
Mm,
all that and animation. I don't know. I'm just more. Animation can work easier on me. I don't know why. I don't really know why.
that's fair.
It can make me I enjoy it, or it just maybe it's the dirge of like how everything's dark and like
Yeah, right.
brown and black or whatever blacks and yeah,
Yeah,
it's like it's just like I need color. I need more color, bright color in my life. And
definitely.
it's what art is all about. What's your
That's
number
fair.
two?
Now, my number two has some comparisons or some connection to Turning Red, actually, because my number two is Everything Everywhere All at Once by the Daniels, which is also very generational, very Asian representational, very manic. I would even say, and you could argue that I'm being a hypocrite by being like, oh man, that animation has too much information for me. And then my second favorite film is this. But I thought this was a blast in theaters, had a good time with the audience. They're also one of my favorite showings of the year, but I found it revelatory on a second watch at home. I think it just touched me on so much more about what it was doing with the idea of the multiverse, which is a concept I freaking hate. I hate it in Marvel. I think it's a bad idea. I think it feels like it just gives people a lazy way out to recast and miscast and try a bunch of things and then just be like, oh, well, that one didn't count. That's a do-over. That was a molded. This, I think it's the whole theme and the point of the mom character played by Michelle Yeoh. Her best, this is my lock for best actress because she's not only kick ass, she not only is kicking ass and being cool in it, but she's playing the emotion in her eyes when she does it, and it's very sincere. It's my favorite performance of hers, and I've been doing a little bit of a dive on her because she's been like, it's getting a due recognition. And I mean, I love her in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon was my big introduction to her, but I still feel like this is the role that lets her do so much more. But it's all about just kind of the oppression of you have all the time, you want to have all the time to do everything you want to do, but you really don't. Are you losing? It's the FOMO. It's are you losing out? Are
Yeah.
you making the wrong choices here? Are you doing the wrong things to people you love? And then it's the vice versa of someone who sees all that and takes the nihilist report, the darker approach, which is that means nothing matters and I can destroy everything. And it combines those two into a family generational conflict that's tied into doing taxes, that's tied into this young woman who played by Stephanie Shu, who is also one of my favorite performances of the year, who's just like knockout star performance of like getting to bounce all these tones in her performance. And just like they're going head to head, and it's all about that conflict and about that like existential crisis going on in both of them at the same time, and how it gets passed down and how it could be conflicted, and in a fantasy world, how it can maybe be fixed. And it's a fun action movie with all that sci-fi elements, with all that comedy. And my understanding of why people it doesn't work for everyone is that it is very manic, and it is like its sense of humor is very out there in ways that are kind of like not edgelord or edgy, but like they are like very purposely crass and like juvenile at times. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it again, it's that thing of like, who's are we in touch with our inner child or inner teen more? I dug like that you could just be fun with it, and I felt it was positive about all this stuff. It was never condescending. It was never crude for the sake of putting stuff down. It's enjoying that we can enjoy a dumb joke here and there.
Yeah.
And then I also think the other funny thing is I think what I got more out of the second time, it is kind of approaching how we deal with art a lot.
Mhm.
Because the obvious comparison is it's doing a lot of meta jokes. It's doing a parody of Ratatouille. It's doing a reference to Wong Kar-wai films. It's doing a kung fu film inside this family drama. But that's kind of our life. We watch, especially as cinephiles, we watch every single film. We listen to everything. We seek out all this different information in the world, and we don't care that it doesn't cohere necessarily, but just it's our intention spans, it's our what we keep in, and we're consistent in it all. And we let that art either touch us or not, but it's all there. And I feel like that's kind of a lot of what Everything Everywhere, like what its theme is doing too, to the character who wants to do all these things in her, but is still somehow this one simple person, this one Asian mom who has to deal with taxes and businesses, who also maybe wanted to be a singer in another life or wanted to do
Yeah.
kung fu. And it's like
Yeah.
that. I think it's just really touching, and I feel like it wouldn't have worked like if one thing was off, if Michelle Yeoh wasn't in it, if Ki Hu
Mhm.
Kwan, who I didn't mention this whole dumb
Yes.
time, who is fucking a phenom in it, who
Yeah.
doesn't. And what I love about his performance in this too is that he doesn't have to like fake change it or be anything other than himself. They play him straightforward, and he gets to play in these different modes, and it's still him, and it's not him playing up his like quote unquote short roundness of it all, and it's
Mhm.
not him trying to deflect it either. It's just him natural, and that's really cool. And
Yeah.
then just like it filling in all the color and details with all the people who play in it. Obviously, Jamie Lee Curtis is in there as a very fun man of character. The Marshall Club, who are the action people who like help choreograph the action, are like very fun side characters. Jenny Slate has a small comedic role in it. There's like just little pops of fun that keep it going while it's still about this really like kind of meta weird message. And then I don't know, I like other things by the Daniels fine. I like Swiss Army Man fine. I like their music videos fine. I like their short film that I know you're a bigger fan of,
Yes.
Interesting Ball fine.
Yes.
But I feel like this is like encapsulating I being everything in such a way that I get it's like too heady maybe, but for me, and it kind of is a necessary way to approach that, because otherwise you're just kind of fibbing if you're talking about this is how I feel about all these things, but I'm going to like minute it down, like they kind of do the opposite. And it couldn't I get why it doesn't work for everyone. It
Yeah.
really worked for me on even a rewatch. So that's I'm sticking my number two to it.
Yeah. Um, I, here's the thing. I actually really, your analysis was so good. I bumped it up half a star. It wouldn't still get in my top 10, but I do
That's fair.
I quite like the movie a bit. It's at a 7 for me, out of 10 if I would put a rating on it. I had to find this review because it just encapsulates this one line. The third act is basically felt like someone saying "I love you" in super slow mo for the last 80 minutes. That's from John Semley on Letterboxd. But yeah, it's truly that third act of just kind of like, well, we've reached the nihilist, we've reached the binary. What now? And then the result is the movie just being like, forget about the nihilism. I love you, and just trying to hug the daughter character until the emotions, like pile up or whatever. And I don't know. I never really bought the daughter stuff as much as I bought like the failing marriage thing. I think it would have been a really great romantic comedy about just the failing marriage. If it focused more on that. The daughter stuff, it kind of feels a little ad hoc to me a little bit, but that's the one thing that it just feels a little unnatural. It's like one filmmaker, one person critic was like, is one of the Daniels gay? And I don't think either of them are, and it does feel a little, I don't know, it does feel a little shoehorned that's the thing that that they can't relate over. But I don't know, that's kind of, it just feels like, I don't even know if that makes sense. It just kind of feels like it doesn't feel as natural or as organic as her imagining her life if she didn't marry her husband, and everything. And the ending just, it on second watch for me, the ending I felt like I saw the stream some more. What is trying to get me to do. But I do love K. Y. Kwan in that
Mhm.
performance. And that is maybe probably my favorite performance of the year. I love Michelle Yeoh, but I mean, I think I'm so glad he's getting
Yeah,
all the.
no, definitely. Again, very necessary component of the film that worked was him and his performance specifically. And James Wan is in there too. I just want to shout him out too before I
Mm,
forget. Had a good speech at the SAG Awards, I believe. And
mm,
yeah, no, I get the like elements of like. There's also the argument again, like to defend it a bit, sort of like how I defended Tar is not an Oscar film. I don't think this is a nice core film, quote unquote. I feel like the message being positive and having a happy ending at the end of it all is kind of necessary to like being approachable entertainment and also
right.
approaching its themes optimistically. I don't think it too many people I think have made it the point that it's just trying to say, oh, just be nice and things will work out. And I feel like it's actually purposely allowing the mess to still be there. It's still there even at the end where she's like daydreaming while at the end and stuff. I think it's having fun with that element that they saw behind the curtain, and it's so weird behind the curtain, but kind of need that weirdness to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
I still defend it for that, and I don't think it's as simple as people have put it down to be.
Yeah.
But I still also get it's so bombastic in other ways that I can't deny like it's not going to work for everyone. And I'm glad it's working so well that it's in fact a really big Oscar hopeful. Like
Yeah.
that was definitely not likely if it came out like a couple of years prior. And so
I will say I like the movie, and it's about to be universally hated by the worst people online.
yeah.
Because I think it's definitely going to win Best Picture. Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, all right. So we're at our number ones.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to go first, or should I go first?
I mean, I think we could do 3, 2, 1, and we'll say the same thing. I
All
think
right,
it's much
yeah, yeah,
fun.
totally fine. And then we can just talk over each other
Yeah,
like the
exactly.
Safdies at that
It's
one.
everything everywhere all at once, but with us.
Yeah.
No, I'm
All right.
pretty sure we both did 3, 2, 1. The
The
Fablemans.
Crimes of the Future.
Hey, wait a
Sorry,
second.
I wasn't ready for that,
I'm
but it's true.
teasing.
All right.
Okay. I guess you. I just went on everything, so you can go ahead first with
Okay.
yours.
Okay.
Sorry, I
Yeah.
messed up the joke.
No worries. I'll edit. No, I won't edit it. No, definitely not editing as much. I'll edit that beginning. But yes, Crimes of the Future is my number one of the year. A movie I regret more than anything in the world for not seeing theaters, because I just didn't have the time for it at that time, but saw it on DVD. This movie is like the only one that I feel has really come close to what it feels like living in this world in 2022, where it is very bleak of just, I feel like the whole, I'll try to like kind of cool a little bit from my review of just that the whole movie is about surgery as like performative art. Sex is the new sex, as they say, and it starts with the death of a young child, and the mystery of the child kind of drives a little bit of the plot later on. But it's a movie. How do I want to try to see if I can collect my thoughts on. It's about art, and it's about so I saw it mostly as like a criticism on social media, on like the gross parts of social media, like mukbang, true crime podcasts, internet porn. The art in of itself isn't the problem. I'm not saying like there's anything to judge that, but it is that we are starting to become more sexless. Where, as they say, surgery is the new sex in this, and we're becoming less assured of our renewal as a human generation, where it's a lot like it's a lot like the atmosphere of Children of Men, where like we have no hope. You see a dilapidated cruise ship in the beginning as well. The youngest person in the cast dies at the beginning, because as some people have noted, it's because it has almost like a trans allegory of this child is different because he can eat plastic. And then you have a person who is abnormal, a saltenser, who is performing on himself. He's almost exploiting his abnormalities to people for profit, which is a lot of what you can say about art. But we've exploit ourselves, in kind of gruesome ways, in order to profit, like, as I said, mukbang or internet porn or various things. And there's no judge on that, but there is like a betrayal of the people that you are part of. There's a betrayal of maybe it's not a one-to-one comparison there with the social media of but everything, but it's yeah, as a queer person, as a bisexual person, I found it really interesting that that there is entertainers that exploit themselves for profit, and is that the question of are you betraying your own community, is a question. I'm sorry, I'm collecting my thoughts. It's a
No,
really hard movie to talk about.
it's a really dense movie, and I
Yeah.
saw it earlier in the year. It's now launched since the NDA over. I saw it at a sneak preview,
Mhm.
because I got a chance to, and I don't do this often, but for this I was excited because it just at the time played at Cannes and was like blowing people's minds, so I wanted to be in on it. I really dug it. It's in my top 20. I think I haven't rewatched it, and I haven't like gone over how much meaningful it is to me. My girlfriend Kelsey loves it. In fact, I've been showing her Cronenberg because she hasn't seen a lot of his, and it's her favorite by far.
Yeah.
And I think a lot what she gets out of it is, and I mean, I'm kind of just telling why someone else likes it more, but I still
Of
kind of
course.
agree with her, is that it has a lot to do with the art world. It has a lot to do with being an artist. It has a lot to do with expression in those forms and the differences and the interconnected likeness, like arguments and stuff with other people, and having a helper who helps you process it and having other perspectives and stuff. But I also think there's humor to it too, in that like there are different artists and some of them suck, and you kind of have to sit there and look at this dumb ear guy dance, and then you make fun of him. And then there's other weird artists who like do other things, and then it's the form of the art that keeps changing and changes you. And there's a
Mhm.
lot of fun meta elements to that. It's a
I
really weird world too, where like obviously it's post-apocalyptic, like you said, but there's also just these weird dynamics of like it's all these audiences going out, it's all these back alley like artists who are doing surgery on themselves, as that to be another artistic metaphor. And then there's these weird two women who like kind of work in the system, who are like these like certain maintenance people who end up being like kind of secret like assassins too. And then it's about a film noir where the guy's kind of like a detective solving a murder mystery, as well
Mhm.
as like being on the inside of these worlds. And it's like it kind of is, I imagine, what Cronenberg feels like being an artist is like it's kind of a means to an end for him to get to do his stuff. And it's kind of a reckoning, like you say, of like how much is he putting into himself and how much is he like hurting himself in the process,
yeah.
or helping
I,
others or hurting others. Yeah.
I feel like I was muttering there for a second, but the film is so apocalyptic and so
Yeah.
it's speaking to an emotion that I rarely see in cinema, of just kind of like a kind of a hopelessness in a way, but that the ending is where the individual accepts this part of himself,
Mm.
is kind of the little gleam of hope that we have, is that at least we can try to accept ourselves and move forward. Uh with the world. That's the first step of our way out. There's the crushing scene of them opening up the child, and it's a
Yeah.
little spoiler territory, but they can't find the organs anymore, and it's kind of revealed that the government has removed these
Yeah.
organs to take away from our it's this kind of Leia Seydoux does this monologue about how they'll have to keep doing autopsies until they find out the truth. And just something just kind of indefinable, maybe. And that's why I struggle with it a bit, like talking about it, is that we'll never, the government is taking control of our bodies while we're, trying to make our best world, trying to make new art. And we can't even make new art because our bodies are already controlled by the government, and how we adapt and how the economies adapt. So it's just like this never ending kind of Ouroboros of
Mm.
apocalyptic vision. I really, I will say that a lot of people love Crash, and I get why people like Crash, but I felt like this movie was the better version of Crash.
Yeah.
uh
No, I
uh
agree with that.
yeah.
I'm not too big on Crash either, and I feel like it has elements that work in terms of like its views, but I don't know. I don't see the same appeal that people do about its like psychosexuality. Whereas here I do think its psychosexuality comes through a lot more. And maybe that's like it's different pitch, different actors. I don't know, but I don't know. It's very wiry. I felt like every actor in here is doing something really interesting physically that is really compelling to its environment as well. That is just like helps with the genuine feeling of it being tied to our like nerve ending sexuality, like just parts of us that we can't help but express, like the parts that get repressed into it so badly that sexuality becomes something else.
Yes,
And
exactly. No, you got it. You got it way better than me.
no, you're
Anyway,
rough on it. All right.
all right, let's bring us home.
Well, I
Michael, your
spoiled
number
it as a
one.
joke, but my number one, and I would say it's similar in theme a bit in terms of like reckoning with art and yourself, and it's Steven Spielberg's The Fablemans, which again, almost a James Cameron bit of it is I don't consider myself like the world's biggest, especially late era Spielberg head. There are films of his I love, obviously, and there are films of his I don't really care for, and I kind of see him as the same like big blockbuster populist filmmaker who never really gets to be too like personal or he can lapse out of in and out of sincerity on a moment's whim sometimes. And I feel like this is probably his most sincere and personal for many obvious reasons film because it's so autobiographical, but it's also just like very reckoning with really like for a blockbuster filmmaker, really interesting themes about like art and coming to terms as a coming of age again, which is again why I was such a sucker for it. Is it's a coming of age as someone who is falling in love with film and wants that to be his form of expression and the pitfalls of that and the reality of the world seeping in around that and kind of like the roughness of that no piece of advice people can give to you ever really works for you in that moment because you're kind of like in your own world as opposed to the real world and how those two coincide can kind of be tricky and weird. And even then, even at the end, like the bombastic like appreciation of that you are now in the world of film and you can heed the world of film as your like guiding star may not really have that much like to answer for you for at least a long time. And that's kind of like the fun of it. There's lots of fun in it anyway. There's lots of fun in like the humor and the like family drama, but it's also just like the darkness behind like dreaming of film is just like you kind of wreck your own life doing it. And I mean that's kind of a fun thing about its cinephilia, like its film references and everything. It's just like you commit yourself and you submit humbly to the task and you hope in the meantime you're doing the right thing. And that's kind of the best what anyone can do in any field, let alone art. And I think it was really cool that he like found that part of himself so late in his career. Got a stellar cast. Gabrielle LaBelle, who plays Sammy Fableman, is really terrific. And then you got the heavy hitters, obviously Paul Dano and Michelle Williams. And but even then, like freaking Seth Rogen comes in and tears your heart out, and Judd Hirsch has like a great 1-2 punch of a moment in there that got him Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars, which might be like the least screen time to an Oscar Supporting Actor nomination ever, possibly. And just so many like detail, like all the teen actors are really great in it. The girlfriends and the like bullies are like these really weirdly dynamic characters that could have been played with one pitch, and really only like one bully is kind of like the one note, but then the rest kind of get to have these weird like inner like dynamics that like play with like what he's going through. And I don't know, I just love the atmosphere of it, love the environment, and love like just the narrative propulsion of it. It's probably like simpler compared to like some of my other like weirder favorites of this year, but it's almost like I kind of appreciate that it got to be so simple. So like all the weird darkness around it can kind of linger in different ways. So I mean, it's uncharacteristic of me, even though it might not sound like it, but it was, I don't know, I loved it immediately and I haven't stopped thinking about it on occasion. So
Wow.
hard to hate it.
Well, spoiler, this was the one I was trying to figure out between 10 and 11. Yeah. I didn't know it would be so high up on your list, but yeah, I know I remember you loving it when we saw it together. I really love this movie too. I just kind of my only real thing is that I don't know. I don't know if we I have a little knee-jerk thing of this, like, so Spielberg, you know, he was so good at filmmaking that he ruined his life, his parents' marriage, and then, you know, he's like, I can't go back to the camera, but I have to, you know, and like he's just, I don't know, like I'm trying to figure out, like, there's not a lot of it's like a Taylor Swift song and a little bit of like, Taylor's like, it's the boys that are wrong and I am great, kind of thing of like, where was the criticism on Spielberg as a person, or who he became later? We don't even,
I get
like
that.
a little bit of the result, like who this person is. But I do think it's a very good, it's still a very solid coming of age story, and that hits a lot of, weirdly enough, like I lived in Arizona, I lived in San Jose. These are both, and I live in Los Angeles. So
Yeah.
all three places that Spielberg has lived. So that all like hits me a bit. And oh man, yeah, it's just like a great ensemble. It's a very fun film. And of course the ending is hilarious and cute.
Yeah. I mean, you brought this up, I think, I don't know, to you or just to me personally, that you love a lot of his earlier darker work, and we don't see the darker side of Spielberg that often.
Yeah.
Because obviously he's a very big audience crowd pleaser. He does these big ideas that really you can't be negative about or too dark about. And I see that perspective, and I kind of see that doesn't even come in here too much, even in its darkness. Like, even in like its weirdest like moments of like this Western moment that happens in the school hallway, or Judd Hirsch's moment where he's like a harbinger of doom, but that's very goofy. It's still kind of pitched like for a mass audience a little bit. And there's nothing as weird as like Duel or Sugarland Express coming in here, but it's still like, I still feel like it's such an interesting like personal pitch that I couldn't help but like really dig it, and it really spoke to a lot of elements about like what I really to do. Am I ever going to get to express myself? And if I do, what would that change, and what would that happen, or how would it be heard, or how would it be misinterpreted? I don't know. There's a lot of anxiety about art in it that I see is kind of what they're in Crimes of the Future is kind of what it's pitching. So, but it's like a completely different package, probably more like more generally accessible one, but it's one that I don't know, I still found a lot of personality to. Like, it never shirks on that. So I definitely, I don't know, it was an easy love for me. So it's almost too much of a given. So
yeah, no, I get it. It's a great movie, and I'm glad I'm glad he got to make it.
Yeah,
it's a big thing.
no, definitely. I
Finally.
mean, again, late era Spielberg right now is doing good. I really liked West Side Story, and I'm curious about his bullet, about his possible Napoleon thing. And I'm curious what he's up to now. He's got his big one out, so let's see what he's up to.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, that's about it then, I guess,
mm-hmm.
right? That's our top 10 of the year. This has been fun. This has been interesting. We're learning about each other and everything. Did you want to throw any honorable mentions really quick, or do you want to just head on out of here?
I mean, just minor honorable mentions. You didn't like EO, but I did. I thought that was a very fun, dynamic film. I liked Barbarian. I mentioned a couple times as like a really interesting modern horror that isn't beholden to like the elevated horror tropes. It is its own dark comedic weird thing. I think it's really dynamic and daring and really cool. And it is also a little crass, like some horror films, but it's fun about it. 3,000 Years of Longing, I think, got a lot of late era shirking, like came and went in theaters. No one paid attention, kind of wrote it off, but I thought it was really dynamic and cool. I think there's a lot of common elements with it, with some of my favorites, and just couldn't make it there. And then I liked Bones and All. I don't know how I'd rank it with like other Luca films I liked, but in terms of like its kind of new atmosphere and like body horror elements, I thought it was really dope, and I feel like that also kind of came and went for a lot of people. So
Yeah. Yeah. Those are all pretty decent. Yeah. Well,
no, I was saying except EO. I know you don't like
yeah,
it.
yeah, EO, yeah. It's Warhorse, but artistic, so it's okay, I guess. I don't know. My honorable mentions, yeah, Fableman's, White Noise for sure. Those two, really, really do love them. Maybe they'd go up eventually. I really like the Munsters. I know that's just an oddball, whatever movie
Yeah.
for a lot of people, but hot take, I think Scream 5 was the best murder mystery movie of the year over like Glass Onion or whatever. And The Janes, I thought was just a solid meat and potatoes like documentary about a historical issue that I also really loved. I think that got nominated for documentary. I kind of hope it wins. I don't know. I forgot. maybe it didn't.
I don't think it got
Ah,
nominated,
that's such a
unfortunately.
shame.
I think it's
Anyway,
like, yeah, yeah, we don't have to talk about the nominations
yeah, of
again. It's all
course.
good. But
For
don't
sure.
think it made it. Sorry.
Well, anyway, this has been fun, Michael. I'm glad
Yeah.
we talked out our top tens, and I'm gonna stop recording soon. But thank you so much for doing this. I'll look forward to have you back on, whatever this podcast may take a shape of or form of. We'll see in the future.
Yeah, definitely. Love like talking film with you, and we don't usually get to do it for almost 2 hours, so that's good.
Do you want to plug yourself? I don't even know.
Yes,
Whatever. Sure, go ahead.
do the proper podcast plug
Yeah.
thing. My name's Michael Hearn. You can look at my website, michaelchearn.com, to see my short films and information on me as a writer and director in the Los Angeles area. Please check out my short films.
All right. And I forget. Oh, you can follow me Instagram william.ig, and that's about it. I mean, I have a website at william evans.com. You can look at films. I shall have a short film soon. We'll see. But thank you so much for listening, and talk to you later. Bye.